in a world where disruption is no longer optional. It's survival. A few people understand that better than our next speaker. As CEO of Raven, he has helped out more than 200 digital products and advised some of the world's largest companies on how to link and think differently, move faster, and execute loudly. Recognized globally as a leader in digital transformation, he's here to challenge the way we see strategy and speed in business today. Please, let's welcome Juan José de la Torre.
Hello, Volcano. Hello, Volcano. Come on. We're here to talk about disruption, so nothing can be more exciting than disruption today. So I'm JJ de la Torre. There you have all my information, and more important, you have a QR that we can get connected and start a conversation. By the end of today's conversation, and I want it to be a conversation, I told the organizers that I'm going to be open for questions at the end, so please prepare your questions. I want you to take 3 main takeaways. 1, fully understand what is disruption. Today we talk about, and we heard about a lot about disruption. People use it as a synonym of transformation, digitalization, etc., etc. I want you to fully understand what is disruption. Second, you need to understand that disruption can be designed. And by the matter of fact, we'll see with examples, when you design it, you're going to be successful. And third, you need to understand that disruption is about an ecosystem. It's about building components that are going to allow us to actually create, nurture, launch, and be successful doing innovation and then disruption. So let's start. What these guys have in common? If you see them are among the companies that we're using daily, among the companies that we call disruptions. Well, it's not innovation, it's not digitalization, and of course it's not transformation, it is disruption. So what really is disruption? Disruption is about changing the game. Disruption is about, daring to do something different, and something that is very important, observing the market in a different fashion. We'll see it with examples that most companies, more corporations, keep doing what we call innovation. Incremental evolutions of whatever they have. Incremental evolutions of their value proposition, incremental evolutions of their distribution, without actually changing the game or thinking what they are doing wrongly. Innovation looks for improvements, looks on how actually you can renovate something, how you can extract more value from your clients, how you actually can push it further. But when we talk about disruption, we're talking about shifting the market. We're talking about recognizing the laws, the rules that exist in a market that has not been written. Think about any market. Think about the insurance. Think about the taxi. Think about any market where, a disruptor exists. That disruptor was able to identify some rules that everyone were following without being written. And everyone was trying to improve those rules. Everyone was trying to actually cope with them and make it a little bit better. Everyone was actually identifying the frictions that exist in that product or service and try to make it a little bit better. That a little bit better give all the space for the disruptor to come and change the game. So when we see this in matters of scale, and here goes the definition, the first thing is digitalization. And digitalization is very addictive for a corporation or for a small company, because mainly thinks about and focus on an established product, an established process that exists, and then using technology to make it more efficient. So you take an onboarding of a bank, you take an onboarding of an insurance, you take a delivery on a retail, anything that you can imagine. And when you add technology, you make it more efficient. When you make it more efficient, immediately it creates savings. So it improves your P&L. So this is why it's very addictive, because you're not changing anything in reality. You're just optimizing using technology. But as you can see in the chart, it's extremely basic. It's extremely basic in terms of the value that can create. And then comes transformation. That, in a chat with one of my kids, like he's 9, he asked me, Dad, what is transformation? So I said, it's like a transformer. What do you mean a transformer? It's like, yeah, you have a car that then gets into a robot, and then can get back to a car. So it's possible to trace the end result from the original result. But the main problem of transformation is around a vision, not an actual evolution, not around a product or a value proposition enhancement or a value proposition creation. It's about a company declaring themselves, we're going to be the Amazons of Latin America. Or a company declaring itself, we're going to transform and now we're going to be A, B, or C. It's about a lot of people trying to follow a statement rather than, an actual value proposition or an actual product. And then comes disruption. Disruption is much difficult to execute and implement. Why? Because it involves a detachment. It involves that what makes me successful up to this date is no longer to be what is going to make me successful tomorrow. And therefore, I need to detach. There's a word in English called carnage that basically is like strong detachment. So I have to have that strong detachment that means giving away revenue, giving away profit, investing without knowing if we're going to have a result. And that takes a lot of courage, takes a lot of daring, and it's a jump into an opportunity that many companies are not exploring. So when we talk about this, we're going to be talking about two things that both revolves around value. So either we're creating value through disruption or we're capturing value through disruption. Disruption is not about, automatization, reducing cost, making optimal or making more profitable an organization or a product. It's about value. And that value is either created or being captured. So let's go and see, the different drivers. First, as I was sharing with you before, it starts with an unmet need and inertia. The unmet need basically is something that has not been captured by anyone, that is sticking in the market, is present in the market. But the second component, the inertia, is how the corporations and the companies that operate in this market are revolving around that. So when you talk and you see the inertia, every single company is following the same rules. We talk about insurance, any country that has not been disrupted, very easy to sign up, very complicated to actually make a claim. So because it's very complicated, then actually, we start reducing the frictions. We talk about pensions. Again, extremely complicated product. So because it's extremely complicated product, I need to put more people, I need to train more people, I need to basically give them KPIs, give them bonus, et cetera, to try to get them to be able to explain something that is very complicated. But what about if we do a disruption there, and instead of having a complicated product, we make it a simple product, a product that can be explained through a chatbot. So when this happens, we see that pain and friction start hiding in this thing. And the customer is changing, the customer is evolving. We have a concept that we call liquidity experience, which basically translates into the fact that every time that you have an amazing experience, becomes your minimum expected experience the next time that you experience that. Let's do an example. How many of you have flown, in an airplane that has Wi-Fi? Raise your hands, please. Okay, almost everyone. Now I want you to go back to that moment and remember that surprising moment. You took a selfie, you even make a phone call, like you were super happy. It was a surprise, it was a wow moment. Your expectations get reset to, when I fly on a plane, I have Wi-Fi. What's happened the next time that you get into a plane that doesn't have Wi-Fi? It's a crappy plane. Excuse my French. So it doesn't even relates to the service of the plane, to the fact that the plane is actually doing what it's supposed to do, take you from A to B in a certain time. Now something that was completely accessory becomes a differentiated in your experience. So this is the changing dynamics on customer. But on the other side, opportunity arises when the incumbent are not able to cope with these expectations and keep doing incremental, an evolution towards, incremental innovation. You will see that I'm not using much the word of innovation, and I explain in a second. So when we have a customer needs an incumbent inertia, following the same trends, so following the same rules on a market, we have the opportunity of disruption. And examples are many, so I try to put the ones that everyone will relate and know about it. So Revolut, for instance, they focus on doing something particularly well, which was about Forex and sending money from one country to another in a very clear and sharp manner. Was something that, banks at that time didn't want to touch. Why? Because it was a massive margin in Forex and actually kind of like trading and sending money like from one country to another. So why they will actually do that detachment? Why they will actually, to fix something from the client, erode margin or sacrifice revenue? At that point was not seen as something. So a disruptor comes with the same approach that I said, see a customer dynamic, see a customer need, and also understand that everyone is behaving in the same manner and is able to actually create a new value proposition. Nubank, pretty much the same. And these two examples just, operating in different markets demonstrate the same component. They focus on fixing a specific issue and a specific friction, and from that evolve it. Second, when we talk about disruption, we're not talking about improving it. We're not talking about, taking a value proposition that is what you consume, is the product, is experience, is the monetization, and just improve it. We're talking about reframing. We're talking about, as I said before, this is not transformation from A to B. This is completely different. It's a cut. It's doing something in a particular different manner. So when we see disruptions, they're not trying to do something better. And as I was sharing with kind of like a person from a corporation just a few seconds ago, this is not about launching a product from the perspective of the corporation saying we're going to do something much better, which you spend a lot of time, you invest a lot, and at the end the customer don't see the difference. Besides, on paper you said, well, this product is 10, 20, 30% incrementally better, but it still is operating under the same components. It still is having the same issues that needs to be faced. A disruptor can and change the value proposition, craft a new value proposition. So when incumbents are playing chess, it's all about strategizing, and it's all about the movement in the short term and the positioning that can be perceived. Disruptor is playing Go, where you focus more on simplicity. You focus more in the long term. And what seems to be a very small movement in the short term, it's hindering or it's actually enabling a bigger move in the long term. Examples, we can talk about Netflix, Spotify, or even TikTok. Spotify didn't actually operate in the same frame or in the same operating model or even business model than the traditional music industry. They, instead of selling songs, which was everyone was saying, or selling CDs or selling kind of like albums, they focus on moods. So they changed completely the environment. They changed completely the value proposition and incorporated the value proposition that was completely new, based and powered on the traditional music industry. Third, we get to distribution. Distribution is usually the component that nobody pays attention when we talk about disruption. Everyone focuses on the product, and you will see like a lot of the startups that are here, a lot of the corporations, a lot of the enterprise, they focus about the product. But the product is completely useless if it's not able to reach, the hands of the user that is intended to utilize it. And distribution is not how you sell it. It's not about physical distribution. It's not about, having your product to be consumed. It's about access. How people is able to access your product. How people is able to consume your value proposition. In the own economy, having real estate, having point of sales, having physical distribution was extremely important. Today, you can actually overhaul all of that, just focusing on access and focusing on creating an ecosystem, as we'll see in a second. So you take Stripe, Deal, Shopify, Deal was here, by the way, OpenTable, Revolut. All of them created a distribution that is really the differentiated product or differentiated component on the value proposition. You talk about this business model, and the business model gets evolved and gets pushed and gets consumed, the more and more we're able to actually craft that distribution. Before, we used to focus on the product. And take the example of real estate. You know, you want to buy a house, you need to go visit the house, you need to go and find the listing, etc. Today, the product reaches you. You know, the product is on your hands. The product is consumed by you. And the distribution is what's allowing you to actually being able to decouple not only your needs, but also when you're going to consume that product. So going back into the distribution, in the example of real estate, you now open an app or open a website, you scroll, and in 20 minutes, you can review 30 houses. The house, which is the end product that you're willing to consume, is being distributed through a different interface. And you're consuming it in a completely different fashion. Same example, you know, was done by Uber. You know, Uber did not create another taxi, did not reinvent the car, did not reinvent, you know, the product of transformation. They reinvented distribution, meaning that distribution of that means of transformation was available for you anytime, when you want it, with full clarity of how much it's going to cost, going from A to B, at what time it's going to pick you up, and who is going to pick you up. It's a change on the value proposition that gets distributed and materialized in a different manner. 4, and I start my chat today like saying that this is incredibly important. So once we understand what is disruption, once we understand that disruption can be designed, and it can be designed in terms of a value proposition and a distribution, we need an ecosystem. An ecosystem is actually what is going to allow us to actually scale, you know, the disruption. We need internal components. That is how actually we're able to craft, create, you know, nurture, and launch disruption. We need external component. That is where the disruption is going to live. And we need catalyst. Catalyst is actually what is going to give us that exponential curve, that exponential growth that we're looking. When we're talking about disruption, we're not talking about linear growth. We're not talking about, you know, incremental growth. We're talking about exponential growth. And every single example that we can imagine has achieved this by mastering these 3 components. 5th, we need the flywheel. At Raven, we specialize on actually creating and capturing disruption, working with Fortune 500 companies and working also with startups and high-growth companies on how to deliver disruption. And to do so, you need what we call the flywheel. The flywheel is something that reiterates and goes over and over. And every time that gets run, you know, get more virtuous. When you create a better experience, when you focus on your clients instead of actually focusing on yourself, when you actually go and solve an issue instead of actually creating a new feature, you know, you have a better experience. With better experience will come better adoption. Better adoption will give us more data. Data will allow us to enhance the product and reduce our acquisition cost. That then is going to allow us to scale. And then this gets repeated. And you know, like, it's a very funny anecdote around this thing because everything starts with experience. So when I was saying that disruption can be designed, start by the matter of fact that we need to concentrate on what's the issue that we're solving. And to understand the issue, we need to understand our customers. So let me tell you an example around this. You know, nowadays, you know, well, let me ask you the question. Like, do you think, you know, your customers are at the center of what you need to do? Come on, raise your hands. Yeah, no, like, I don't think that no one at this point will say that, you know, the customer is not at the center of what they're doing. You know, like, so we can agree that 90-something%, or let's say 100% will be there. Then, when a customer interacts with you, are you considering that interaction for your next interaction? Raise your hand. Okay, so we go from 100% to something like 30%. And I can continue asking this question until we're going to get to 1% or 0 point something percent. And we have done this around Latin America with a study. And the study actually said 100% of the companies declared that their customers are at the center of everything that they do. 100%. We start asking questions like this, and one of the questions is like, when a customer is going to churn, are you offering, a retain offer based on the historic data of that customer, plus, the interactions that that customer has with you in the last 30 days, yes or no? And the answer was 0 point something percent. So besides we declare that we start, we evolve, and we finish with the customer, the reality is like very few companies are actually taking into consideration the customer into what you do. So then this, when we see it on the wheel, translate into, I'm creating a product that I think that my customers want, that I think that my customer will consume. And then I'm using a billboard to promote it, and then the customers are not consuming the product. What's happened there? We didn't solve any problem. We didn't evolve a value proposition. We didn't craft distribution. We didn't create anything new. We just did something incremental that was made, and created from the top and from the mind of our customers. So when we play back this, that is kind of like everything. So we start with unmet needs and the inertia. There is a problem on a market, there is a problem on a specific product or a value proposition that everyone is resolving and everyone is behaving in the same way to cope with it. And incumbents, what they do, they recognize the problem and they try to reduce the frictions. They don't fix it, they try to reduce the frictions. So we're doing this a little bit better, understanding that this is not optimal what we're doing. So when we find that, there is an opportunity for disruption. So how you create it? Well, you focus on value proposition. You focus on what's the product, what's experience, what is the monetization model, your business model, and what are the enablers, and how actually you can deliver it in a way that is going to solve this problem in a fashion that is different to what your customers are expecting and what your competitors are doing. Third, we look into distribution. And we look into how we can get this new value proposition that is disruptive into everyone's hands and being consumed, leveraging technology and gaining scale in a fast manner. And this is actually leveraging assets that are from third parties, connecting and creating ecosystem. This is actually connecting APIs. This is actually looking at distribution in a different fashion. Not in the way that we look at distribution as, tracks that go from A to B and deliver goods. This is not about delivering goods. Again, distribution is about granting access. When you talk about or you think about Netflix, before you need to actually pick up your car, go and rent basically something in a store. Now the distribution is how that movie gets delivered to you. That's the magic. It's the distribution channel applied to this new value proposition. Fourth, we need to understand that this is an ecosystem. And because it's an ecosystem, start inside the company. Independent if you're a corporate or you're a disruptor or you're a startup, if you want to disrupt, you need to start internally getting the incentives, getting the components, and getting everyone to be able to actually disrupt. If the incentives are not aligned on creating disruption, then you continue doing incremental innovation, incremental product evolution, which is going to help you in the short term, and in the midterm, your business model might be completely eroded or disappear, and in the long term, you might not be even around. We start internally, then we go externally. Who are the partners that we need to include to actually get this product, get this value proposition delivered and distributed at scale? And which are the catalysts? Which are the catalysts that are going to really give us that exponential growth? Which are the catalysts that are going to really fuel and allow us to grow in a manner that we have not seen before? And of course, if you're doing these three things, you need to detach. You need to be able to actually leave aside, leave behind your success, your stories, your distribution, your assets to build something new. And last but not least, when you have this clarity, then you can start building the wheel, you can start creating this wheel, and basically you can start pushing distribution and disruption, forward. So the message is like, stop chasing trends. This is not about, the latest trend and then we're going to incorporate it into the next product. This is not about, oh, everyone is doing this, all the corporations are doing this, so we might do an MVP around this. It's not about that. This is about, connecting with your customer, acknowledging that most of the time there is a friction that you have not been able to solve, and that the market where you operate have solved it, or in reality, unsolved it in the same manner. And started from that, you can start crafting disruption and distribution. So one last story before kind of like we open for questions. So around 2000, there were a group of surfers that have a need. That need was not met, was not solved by the camera industry. And was like, we wanted to record when we were actually driving a wave. So a small company came up and basically said, we're going to do something really simple. Pretty much, we're going to do a camera that has no screen, that has no visor, that basically is just one button that allows you to record, and is waterproof. That company was not trying to actually compete against the camera industry. That company was not going against them or trying to play in the same field that they were doing. Completely in the opposite. They were focusing on an issue that was completely unsolved. So when the camera industry was producing bulky, cameras, bulky gear, and to be carried with you was extremely expensive, they were in the other way. They stripped down functionality, stripped down almost everything, and leave you with just the simple component that you needed to actually deliver this value proposition. That company, you can guess, was GoPro. What GoPro didn't realize in that moment is like they were creating a new distribution model. A distribution model that was not based on the camera and capturing moments, but rather sharing experiences. And rather being able and allowing anyone to actually deliver and share an experience with a broader audience. These guys created a disruption from a product perspective, a disruption from a distribution perspective. And if you go back and analyze, they follow precisely the things that we just discussed. So thanks a lot. We have kind of like a few moments. So of course I have to aim you to actually do disruption and go into disruption. And I would like to see if there is any question in the audience that we might benefit of it. Yeah, over there. Can we get a mic?
Yeah. Solo me puedes prender el micro, porfa. Where is the machine?
Thank you.
Hi, Juan Jose. My name's Alan from Castillo Hermanos. Great presentation, first of all. Specifically, when talking about being a customer-centric company, you made a lot of emphasis on, for being disruptive, we need to be able to really understand our customer and where we can create that value proposition. And you made an example on, specifically, there's different levels to understand where a company is in the different layers of being customer-centric. You made one specific sample. I was wondering if you could go into a little bit more depth on more examples on how you'd break that scale or the different layers on understanding your customer? Thank you.
So I think that you need to make it something that is not aimed or deemed for one unit. You know, yeah, we have a customer experience area. I think that everyone in a company need to understand that they serve customers, and understanding the customer is crucial for an evolution, a new product, a new value proposition, or even distribution, as I said before. So first thing is like you need to make it something that is company-wide and company-wide understanding, which actually requires a rebalance most of the times of the KPIs and the metrics of success that you have in a company, which is not easy. It starts usually by small departments that, you know, as a virus, start kind of like contaminating the other ones until everyone gets into the same loop or the same way of thinking. It's about, you know, enabling and empowering, for instance, anyone that interact with customers directly, which corporations does very poorly. Meaning, if you see a disruptor, any customer agent is able to actually do whatever, you know, they want between a very large frame. Meaning, if you complain, they can give you money back. They can give you, you know, they can really kind of like understand you and solve the issue. Whereas a traditional company goes through a process of escalation. You know, no, I cannot solve it. I give it to another. I cannot solve it. And that creates a lot of friction and a lot of frustration. What's happened, and I will relate to what I said, that is this, you know, kind of like a component that we always redefine our experience with, the liquidity component. Is like when you interact with Uber or with a disruptor, you expect certain level of interaction. Then you go and interact with your utilities, you know, your telecom, your bank, and you say, oh, these guys are, yeah, I know. I know that if I have a problem, I have to send like 10 emails and 7 phone calls. And that's precisely where the disruptor comes in. So if you're sitting in this side on a corporation and you're not able to actually empower your agents, empower the organization to solve from a customer perspective and have everyone thinking around the customer, then you're going to be disrupted. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Thank you.